These are perfect for minimum radius curves, and that means that you can put for yourself a full working 009 layout in a quite small confined space. Hi there everyone, welcome back to the Jenny Kirk channel here with me, Jennifer Kirk. It's great to see you and I hope I find you well. And today we're going to be delving into a different gauge. Now I'm really careful the way I said that because gauge and scale sometimes get conflated with each other. But this is 009 and I'd really like to extend some thanks to PECO for sending these over to be reviewed. And this is in association today with our sponsor, Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders and accessories, which are designed by enthusiasts for enthusiasts. And if you want to find out more, check out the links down below. But I really want to show you these. They really do look nice, but without further ado, let's take a look. These are the items that PECO have very kindly sent over for review. And as you can see, 009, this is something that I've never reviewed before, but just to put this into context, 009 is a particular gauge, not scale. Its scale is exactly the same as 00, but it runs on 9mm track, and that's where the 009 comes from. And what that means is that these represent narrow gauge within the same scale as 00. And these coaches in particular are modelled after the Festiniog Railway bug box coaches. And this particular livery is the early preservation period livery. So I'm guessing these would be suitable for 1950s, maybe 1960s. I noticed in the PECO catalogue that they also have announced some in the Victorian plum livery, and they really do look exquisite, but I don't think those are out yet. But these are new into the shops and they might otherwise have passed underneath your radar, especially if you don't natively model 009. And what I really like about these is that they're small enough to go as loads on flat wagons. So even if you don't have a narrow gauge line on your layout, these might be a great idea to provide loads for things like well trolls, that kind of thing, under the pretense that these may be on their way to being shown somewhere, displayed, maybe at a London terminal as part of something that's going on. You can think of a wealth of reasons to justify having some of these on your layout. Now, the three different coaches that we've got here, I'm going to put two of these to one side and I'm going to start on one of them. So we've got the first class, the third class and a zoo car. And actually the zoo car, when I do come to that, that actually is my favourite of the three. First up, we've got the first class coach. And outwardly, at a glance, it looks very similar to that third class coach. But actually there's a difference in the window spacings. So if I put them side by side, you can see the first class coach has the small, big, small, big, small, big, small, whereas the third class is just big, 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 big. So definitely a different moulding on there. They come in these clear, transparent boxes with a card insert. It's quite a tough plastic actually, so these do survive travel really, really well. And it's just simply a case of opening the top, and there's a bit of a faff to get them out. They are tightly in here. Let me just try and get that out. And I guess this is to stop them from moving about in transit. So the coach itself there, it comes fastened onto this plinth. And you can see you actually need to take this little twist lock on the bottom. You don't need any special tools for this, just twist and the coach comes away. And it does feel quite light, but I've tested it on some 009 track and it actually does seem to hold the track really, really quite well. It is a smooth and free runner, despite those plastic wheels on there. It does run very low to the ground, so one thing I would say to you is if you're going to run these on an 009 layout, do be a bit careful about ground clearance. You can't build up a shoulder of ballast or have anything that protrudes up too far, otherwise these are going to hit it. The couplings on these are the standard narrow gauge coupling, which are actually very, very similar to some of the couplings that Continental models come with in 00. If you've ever seen anything from Roco from a number of years ago, they do tend to come with this kind of style of couplings, and actually they do work quite well. Each end of the coach is different from the other, and this is something that at a casual glance you might not realise, but you can see there's some kind of trunking, ducting, pipe work on the end, and we do get the vacuum brake on there, comes factory fitted. There's no user needed to apply details on these. If I turn the coach around, you can see it's also got the vacuum brake, but there's no other piping or ducting on there. So both ends of this coach are different from each other, just like the prototype. The sides, the tampo printing really is crisp and clean, and it's really nice to see because these liveries would be almost impossible, even with a steady hand, to get in there to this level of detail. So it really is nice that we're finally seeing ready to run rolling stock coming through for 009. And PECO have already brought to the market the Linton and Barnstable bogie coaches, also a number of items of rolling stock to suit the Linton and Barnstable, and it is great to see that they've turned their attention to the Festiniog. If you didn't already know, it's also the case that in conjunction with Cato, PECO will be bringing the small England locomotives such as Welsh Pony, Prince, those locomotives, the little 040s with tenders, very characteristic of the Festiniog Railway, and featured in the Reverend Wilbert Awdry's Railway Series books as the Engine Duke. So one there for the Thomas the Tank Engine aficionados. The actual crest there of the Festiniog Railway is nicely realised. It's very difficult to see. My human version 1.0 eyes, the batteries are getting quite flat, so really struggling to see that, but it'd be interesting to see what detail is on there under close magnification, because as we've seen on some of the locomotives and other roller stock coming from manufacturers, the standard of the tampo printing is getting really quite amazing. The underside of these, you can see that they've got kind of these low slung boards either side of the chassis. Even though they've got that, there is some degree of chassis detail in there. The wheels are plastic, but very, very free running and do feel pretty solid. They're not flimsy in any way, and I was a little bit skeptical. I'm not a big fan of plastic wheels, but these do seem to do the business. Despite the lightweight, the running qualities are pretty good, and another thing that I've discovered is that the roof, with a little bit of care, I'll see if I don't want to damage this, with a little bit of care the roofs do come off. Doesn't seem to want to in my big fat piggy hands come off on this one, but I will show you on some of the others, and it does mean that it is quite easy to fill these coaches with people. Now the first class and the third class, that's probably not so much of a need, but the zoo car, when we come to that, you'll see, really will benefit a lot from an addition of passengers. I'm going to put that coach to one side, and then I'm going to look to the third class coach here, and in fact actually I should show you the code on the bottom of the box so you know exactly what you're looking for when you go to find these in the shops. And I'll also point out as well that we've got some affiliate links in the description box down below if you really want to get some of these fine examples for yourself. Again, these open up in exactly the same way. The plastic slide bit just fits into a groove in the box. Slide it all out. They are very robust. I was frightened at first of damaging them with trying to get them out of the box, but actually there is zero risk of damaging these because they are incredibly robustly made. I mean, I can drop this. I mean, really, you wouldn't want to do that normally with your rolling stock, but it just holds together well. There's no detail that falls off. They do seem exceptionally sturdy little pieces of rolling stock. We've got exactly the same chassis arrangement on these, the same couplings. We've got the same ends as well. Again, both ends are different from each other. So we've got the non-trunked and the trunked end. And as I alluded to at the beginning of this video, the actual sides of these coaches are completely different in terms of that window spacing. Again, the tempo printing is nicely done, and they really do suit this livery. It's something that, as I've alluded to before, you'd really struggle in model form, which is what 009 modelers traditionally have had to rely on for rolling stock to get this paintwork this crisp. And the fact that these have come through ready to run really is a boon. I can remember for years and years looking at it was actually the Hattons adverts in the Railway Modeller. And they used to have a very small bit for 009 and the legend underneath at the end. This is all the 009 we have. And you could just imagine Norman Hatton screaming out of the back of the shop every time somebody went in and said, "Do you have any other 009? Because it just wasn't available. And PECO have brought to this gauge, scale, see, even the best of us get confused, to this gauge, the kind of rolling stock that those of us who've been modelling in 00 for years have enjoyed, and it really is great to see. We just come now to the third and final coach that PECO have kindly sent over, and this very much is my favourite. The packaging is exactly the same. In fact, I'm going to show you the code on the bottom there. We've got links at the bottom to where you can find these items for yourself, just down in the description box. But they come out exactly the same. I'm warming to this packaging, it has to be said. It really does keep the model very, very well protected in transit. And this particular coach, you can see, is very different from the other ones. It's open on the sides. We do have this kind of mesh effect down the bottom there, but completely open, and these ran on the Festiniog Railway as a kind of observation car, and you can see there tempo printed on the door just above the Festiniog Railway crest. It does actually say observation car, and I can imagine trundling along the Festiniog Railway as was back in the day. These would have been a great way to get fresh air looking out over the North Wales countryside as your train rattled up and down the line behind a locomotive such as Prince, and it really would have been a fun way to experience the line. Now, these coaches these days don't really get a lot of use because I don't think people would like to go all the way up to Blaenau Festiniog in what amounts to a four-wheel cattle truck. It might be quite a bit of a rough ride, but certainly these would be a really great way to see the countryside. On this one, I can quite easily there remove the roof, and you can see on the inside we've got the support in the middle, accurately modelled as per the prototype, and then this kind of bench type seat down the middle, and it's just crying out for some passenger figures to go in there. You can get them from a wide variety of sources, from Hornby, from PECO's model scenes as well, if you get yourself sitting passengers. Even if you've got a whole load of Airfix pilots from various kits lying around, this might be a great home for them, appropriately painted up, and you could make this very much a zoo in there of people. You can see why they got their nickname of zoo cars. The roof is just like actually all of the other ones, but I just wanted to be a bit careful. This one, it's a bit easier to get it out. The ends of the coach, exactly the same as the other two that we reviewed. The vacuum pipes, factory fitted, one end without trunking, one end with, and it's exactly the same chassis on there as well. Tempo printing looks pretty good. There's no separately applied details with these, so where you see the door handles, that appears to be moulded and then tempo printed over, but actually it works really well. But if that keeps the costs down, then that can only be a good thing. And these do come in at a fairly competitive price for items of rolling stock. I'm going to show these now, and I do apologise. I threw this together rather quickly because I don't have an 009 model, so it's not really up to my usual modelling standards, but it does give an idea of how these are going to look in a model-based environment. Now, these are the only other two items of 009 rolling stock that I own, and I wanted to compare this with those to give you an idea that the couplings all match up really nicely. And as you can see, there is a positive coupling action, but to uncouple them, they do come apart fairly readily. Running on the track, again, I have but 10 inches of track, but they feel very, very smooth on there. And together, the trio of them go together to make a really lovely little train. Now, I've inquired with a friend of mine who is an 009 modeler, and they said that actually these are so much easier to get on the track. They've used the Linton and Barnstable outline bogie coaches, and they can be a bit tricky to get on the track, but these I've had no trouble whatsoever. So I'd like to turn now to the score. First up is finish, and I do quite like the tampo printing on these. It's sharp where it needs to be. I did feel that the Festiniog crests weren't as sharp as I've seen before, but actually at this size it looks the part, and I think you probably have to go under some very close magnification to see any fuzziness. The rest of the model, the finish is nicely done. There's a lot of moulded plastic where the actual end finish appears to be the colour of the plastic, but PECO have done really well to pick materials that actually do look right in their native colour. If this keeps down costs of production, then that can only be a good thing. So to finish, I'm going to give these a good solid 8.9 out of 10. So I'm going to turn to functionality. These models roll really freely, and I was quite surprised at this. I thought that plastic wheels were going to be a little bit of an issue, but the material that PECO have used does seem to be pretty hard and tough and smooth running. So there was no feeling of resistance on these, there was no signs of them trying to jump the track, and they do feel, albeit on my very limited track available, that they are going to be nice little runners. They're not that heavy, although you could quite easily, with the roof removed, put some kind of LED flashing or LED shot down in the bottom if you were really, really worried about the weight. But I don't think it's going to be a problem with these. So for functionality, I'm going to give them a 9 out of 10. Ease of use. In this livery, these are good for the early preservation period, so 1950s through to the 1960s, I guess. And it's also quite conceivable that in the later preservation period, for galas or whatnot, that these coaches could conceivably be justified running in this livery. So pretty long lasting. They may not be on the regular service trains, but certainly for specials and galas, these are a must for rolling stock of anybody modelling the Festiniog Railway. If you're modelling a more freelance railway, as most 009 modellers do tend to do, these are perfect for minimum radius curves, and that means that you can put for yourself a full working 009 layout in a quite small confined space. And that certainly is a project that I want to attempt in the near future. So for ease of use, I'm going to give these an 8.3 out of 10. So I turn to aesthetics. And it's interesting to see that PECO have made a lot of use of plain plastic rather than painted plastic for some of the components. The method of construction works really well for this, better than I would have thought, but there is still a slightly flat feel to the colour on the roofs, which I think would benefit from a slight amount of weathering. The ends of the coaches too, I think, are something that would benefit from a slight weathering wash. Just a sort of a black weathering wash would be fine, and it'll pick out some of these details. But overall, I think the aesthetics on these coaches really are good, and I'm going to give them an 8.9 out of 10. Finally, we come to value for money, and I've seen these coaches range around the £25 to £30 mark, and they are quite small for that, but you do get a lot of coach in that amount of money. And traditionally, 009 modelers have been left out in the cold somewhat, so it's great to see this ready-to-run rolling stock coming through from PECO. There is a great range, and of course as well, we're looking forward to the Victorian plum livery that is announced for these coaches too. So all in all, this entire package, I'm quite happy to give an 8 out of 10. That gives us a final overall score of 43.1 out of 50, and that is a really respectable score. They do feel like a very cleverly designed item of rolling stock. They've gone together really nicely, and I'm particularly liking the innovative methods of construction and finish, which has presumably allowed PECO to keep the costs down and keep the prices in the shops reasonably keen. These coaches as well have a peculiar little charm to them, and certainly I can't imagine anybody not being swayed to even using them as a wagon load of some sort to add them to their layout. Certainly for me, it has proved the final push to inspire me into constructing a Festiniog-themed 009 minimum space layout, and I'm particularly looking forward to the Cato-PECO collaboration Small England class locomotives, which at the time of filming are expected to be out in Q1 of 2021. I hope you found this video informative, and don't forget that if you would like to pick up some of these fabulous little 009 Festiniog Bug Box coaches for yourself, you can find them at the affiliate links down below in the description box, and that takes you to a couple of places where we know that you can pick them up at a great competitive price. But don't forget as well to like this video, share it too, and also subscribe to the channel, and you'll be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. But until next time, take really great care of yourself. And this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying bye for now. Today's video is sponsored by Trainomatic, makers of DCC decoders designed to be fully compatible with every manufacturer's locomotive. Visit train-o-matic.com to browse the full range and see what they've got suitable for you. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Michael Churchwood, Anthony Hunt, William Wade, Wayne Johns, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Tepic, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Peter Bolton, Brian Smith, Brian and Dorothy Mudd, Judge Mortis, Gary Lewis, and David Quinn. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.